This episode of One More Thing Before I Go is sponsored by Anchor.fm. When I first had the idea of making the show, my primary obstacle was deciding which platform to use for my recording, hosting, and distribution. Anchor made it so easy because they do all three things and much, much more. It's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast, whether you have 2 listeners or 2,000. It's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started today. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of One More Thing Before I Go, the podcast that celebrates the extraordinary lives of everyday people. I'm your host, Anthony Anderson, and this week I'm joined by world builder extraordinaire Tom Vogt. He's currently living in Vienna, Austria, and I was excited to have a chance to sit down and have a little international chat, compliments of the internet. There may be a few times where it digitizes a little bit, and I'll be working on that in the future. One more note, he makes a mention of a series of videos he's been working on, and in the time that we've done this interview, he's actually managed to put a few more of them up. So I think his number may be up to 4 or 5 at this point, so I encourage you to check that out. I won't waste any more time. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Today we are joined by Tom Vogt, who I know because I joined a game of his online many, many years ago called Battlemaster, and it wasn't his first and it hasn't been his last. Welcome, Tom, to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for having me.
So we've kind of fallen out of contact a little bit. I used to play, and it was this rich, vibrant world with multiple islands, multiple continents, if you will, and it was very text-based. We had some graphics to show the map, but a lot of it was text-based, and the cool part about it was just the social interaction. We created this feudal world kind of together. You laid out the framework, but it became so much bigger and so much more because of the contributions of people. So maybe start with that and some of the earlier projects as you tell people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. About myself, I'm a German. I'm from Europe, and you probably know German board games as a genre. So we like these complicated, deep games with a little bit of a background and a story, where you not just move nameless pieces around the board, but you are living the life in a village, or you are solving a murder in a noble family or something like that.
Yeah.
And I've been a gamer for all my life. I've always liked games, all kinds of games, board games, role-playing games, computer games, everything really. And so I, of course, started to make my own, because when I started to do tabletop role-playing games, there were a few games on the market, and the indie scene was just starting up. But it was pretty normal that you just made up your own system and started to play with a few friends. So it wasn't unusual at all to create your own game system. And of course, when you go into computers and start learning to write computer code, one of the easiest things to do is to write a simple game.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
That's basically how it started, just to teach myself some programming. I wrote 1 or 2 really very small, very simple games. And well, after a long time, when there was internet and I had studied computer science and I had all the basics and fundamentals down, one day I decided to make a small play-by-email game. Just bringing a little bit storytelling and role-playing into this, play by email system. And that was Spellmaster.
Yeah, and so I wasn't around at that point, but I've been able to go back. I think there still exists, for the most part, some old archives of those back and forth. So were pretty cool to read.
Yeah, it was mostly a game of telling your story of your wizard in some world and interacting with other people. And that was played for a long time, for a few years. And the world that it was set in was only a map. I had drawn up a map and decided this is the map, just so that we could refer to places by name and say, okay, we are in this city now, or we are now going through these mountains, or there is a hidden cave in that forest somewhere.
The original map was Age of Wonders you used as the tool, right?
Yep, because it just, the Age of Wonders was a computer game like
Might and Magic and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, Heroes of Might and Magic. Yes, it was similar to that.
Yeah.
So it had a good map editor, and I just used it because I had it. And so I made this map, and then one day I had the idea of filling in the background for Spellmaster a little bit. So I decided to write a very, very simple web-based game where you could take the role of a knight or a king and basically move a few armies around and attack some city and talk to each other, just to give people a little bit more a living world for the Spellmaster game. So the idea was that they could, in addition to their mage, also play some king, or some other people could play some knight in a world, and things would happen that the mages have to react to. And that was the start of Battlemaster. And it has grown a little bit from then, I think. And
yeah.
So it's almost 20 years now that Battlemaster has been running. And it became much, much bigger than, Spellmaster was at the best time played by maybe 20 people. And Battlemaster at its best time had almost 2,000 players.
That's right. Yeah, there was always something new kind of brewing behind the scenes. You got to the point where you couldn't even handle all the coding and bug fixes yourself. You ended up bringing on a team of volunteers, to players and stuff like that. So yeah, it became pretty big.
For a small indie game, it became pretty big, and it was never intended to be that big. So that was a surprise. We had to create new continents with this old Age of Wonders map editor, because it had to fit, of course, to the style, right?
It had to mesh, yeah.
So that was Battlemaster. And after almost 15 years, I think, no, a little bit less, 12, 13 years of Battlemaster, I had an opportunity in my professional career, because I work in computers, of course. And my professional sphere is that I'm a cybersecurity expert, and I do risk management and security, basically. I just published a book, actually, about risk management in German, unfortunately. So not interesting for most of your listeners. But
if you can, down the road, get some sort of translation or something, that may be something of great value.
Yeah, if it sells good. If it sells good, definitely we will see. It really just came out now.
Okay.
But that's my professional career, and I had an opportunity in my career to jump out and do something else for a while. So I decided to build Battlemaster again from the ground up, as I would have built it if I had known everything at the start. So that was Might and Fealty. And it was bigger, more ambitious, more technically advanced, because, of course, in more than a decade, technology had just progressed, and all the PHP frameworks had appeared, and I knew more about databases and all that stuff. So that was Might and Fealty, which is also still running. I gave that to other volunteers to continue, because I went back into my professional career instead of running games as a living. So that was that for a while. Then I moved to another country, so I was busy with other things. And then about a year ago, I decided I want to go back into tabletop role-playing games. And that is the one more thing that I think we will be talking about today.
That's right. So we recently reconnected. Facebook's a beautiful thing, and I saw that you had this new project that you were starting up called the Dragon Eye and this Dragon Eye Atlas. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
So as I said, when I started with tabletop role-playing games, it was pretty normal that you just made your own system, and it was usually a few pages of notes. Very simple, because we were not so focused on the game systems. And of course, this scene has evolved a lot. Many different new approaches in games came out. Things like Fate appeared, and GURPS, and many different things were tried in this, 25 years that I've been playing tabletop role-playing games. And
or even the old standards have been updated 3, 4, 5 times since then. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot has changed, and the scene has changed as well. Many different people now play role-playing games which would not have touched it 20 years ago. And of course, the popularity of the Lord of the Rings movies and the Game of Thrones movies, all of that has contributed to a new interest in fantasy as well.
Sure. And even the rise of Twitch, I'm not sure whether in Germany it's as popular, but things like Critical Role are huge.
Yes,
around here.
True. People have started to broadcast their role-playing sessions, which is also a very interesting thing that nobody would have imagined 20 years ago.
Right. And we've talked about behind the scenes that a lot of your stuff you kind of did it almost as a social experiment. And we're kind of seeing that play out in a different way now, that people who 10, 15 years ago would have never even dreamed of connecting to something like a tabletop role-playing game are jumping in, they're broadcasting, they're using crazy voices and stuff like that. So it's been interesting to see how the industry has changed and progressed, and people have kind of jumped on board as it goes.
Absolutely. And one of the things I like a lot is that many more girls are into role-playing games now. When I started, it was purely a boys' club. And
right.
Then after some years, they were, if you had a girl in your group sometimes, and now sometimes you come into a group and there are mostly girls playing. And right. It's really wonderful. It adds so much to the dynamics, and it adds more depth. And also, I must say, unfortunately, but many guys behave themselves much better when there's a girl in the room.
That's true. They watch what they say. A little bit less chauvinistic. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a lot that's changed. But I didn't like all of it. And one of the things I didn't like is that of the game systems that are on the market now, most of them try to do something completely new, completely different, to be unusual, to be crazy. You need to read 100 pages just to understand what the game world is all about. And I just had a longing for traditional role playing, with hit points and with classes and with elves and dwarves, and nothing too crazy and too unusual, and none of you walk into a bar and there are 20 different lizard and ant races sitting on tables everywhere. Because I think much of that doesn't actually add anything to the game. It's just that, somebody had to add something that is different than something else.
Yeah, and at some point it becomes even a barrier to entry for new people. If you're, like you said, the Lord of the Rings, I'm familiar with that. I know what an elf is. I know what a dwarf is. I don't know a whole lot beyond that. And so it's something like what you're describing kind of eases people into it, rather than having, I've got 20 different race options, but I don't really know what any of these things mean.
Yeah, and also it starts to become a number crunching game. You start to see that, okay, there are 20 races and there are 50 different classes, and what is the best combination of race and class and special heritage and continent I grew up on, and 10 other options to create my most optimal character in this class I like to play.
Yeah, a bunch of min-maxing. Yeah, you're right.
And then basically I just had a desire to play a traditional role-playing game. And one of my bad habits in this life is that I tend to do everything by myself. So I want to play a role-playing game, so let's make one.
Right. That sounds familiar, yeah.
And it's not because I don't like others. I've played the Game of Thrones role-playing game, A Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game it's called. And it's really good. It has some very good game mechanics. And of course, the game world is exceptional. I've played the Mistborn role-playing game, which is very different in some aspects, especially magic, but interesting in itself. I've played, I don't know how many different role-playing games, mostly indie actually. I've played Pathfinder once, and I've played AD&D some 20 years ago once, and I mean not one game, one session, like maybe 10 games we played. But I like these indie role-playing games. There are so many interesting ideas in this sphere, and unfortunately many of them are one interesting idea and then the rest couldn't be pulled off. But there's Villains and Vigilantes is my all-time favorite superhero role-playing game, not because it's so good, but because it has the most brilliant idea of a superhero role-playing game ever, and that is that you, the player, are actually the secret identity of your superhero character.
I really like that, actually.
And that is just so brilliant.
We've attempted a few things along those lines, but sometimes the people that we play with say, I don't want to be too connected to the character, and so they don't like the idea of playing themselves. But yeah, I love that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to love the concept, otherwise it's no good. One other game that I like very much was an old sci-fi game called Justifiers, in which you explore foreign planets and all that, Star Trek away team. But the trick was that you are sent basically by a one-way teleport. And you have to complete your mission or perish. And that's a very interesting twist on an exploration game, to send you somewhere, no backup, nobody will come to save you, succeed or die.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It was out of print for more than 10 years. It recently got a reprint, but it came a little bit too late because I had started writing my own version of it before that. That's the Explorers sci-fi role-playing game, which you can buy actually in hard copy on RPG Now or Drive Through RPG.
Excellent. Familiar with that. I've done a few of my own.
Yeah, it's my version of this idea, send someone to a planet and discover it. So that's just some of the really cool games that I've played over the years. And then I decided last year that I want to start writing my own. It was sitting around a little bit. And this year I started really sitting down, developing the world, writing the rules of what I call a bog standard fantasy tabletop role-playing game. So you have humans, they control the world. You have elves, they live in the forest. You have dwarves, they live in the mountains. And as a little twist, I added gnomes as a race, which you can probably swap out for halflings without too much change. But gnomes are the non-human race that is integrated into human society. They live everywhere in the cities and they build small things and they are tinkerers and they don't have their own kingdom, just so that you have one race that is fairly common everywhere.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So that was the basic idea for Dragon Eye, and then I started to write the rules. Classic, you have a character and here are some values, roll some dice. I came up with a new dice mechanic because I've done some statistical analysis of dice rolling systems before, given a speech about it at some game convention. And most of them, when you look at the mathematical properties of the dice system, most of them are pretty bad.
Yes. Yeah. So what did you actually settle on as the best, most optimal system?
So first, what I want from a dice system is it needs to represent skill properly. Mm-hmm. And there are two elements that in the real world skill affects. The first is, of course, obvious. More skill means somebody becomes better. So he will have a higher chance to succeed at something, and he can succeed at things that someone with less skill will probably fail.
Right.
That's the obvious part, right? But the second part that is very rarely represented is that with a higher skill, you also increase your consistency. My metaphor for this is archery. The beginner might hit the bullseye by chance, but if he shoots 10 or 20 arrows, they will be all over the place. Maybe one hits the bullseye and one hits near and one goes in the forest. It will be just everywhere.
Right.
The master archer might shoot 10 arrows and not hit the bullseye once, but all his arrows will be relatively close together. If he makes a mistake, it's a systematic mistake.
Right.
Maybe all of them are too low or too much to the left, something like this, but he will not spray all over the field.
Sure, that makes sense. So
I've been working for some time on different dice systems that represent this, and I found a few that come close. And Dragon Eye basically is the latest attempt, and the statistics bear out with more dice. It's a dice pool system, so higher skill means you roll more dice.
Okay.
With a higher skill, you get higher results, and they are closer together. And the way that it's done, it's actually pretty simple. You roll a number of dice between 2 and 10 in most cases, and 3, 4 are already relatively good scores. And you subtract the lowest die from the highest die in the result. So we work with 10-sided dice in Dragon Eye. So you roll 4 dice and you come up with 2, 3, 5, 8. So your result is 8 minus 2, because that's the highest and the lowest. So your result is a 6.
Okay.
And what I like about the system is that with any number of dice, you can score a 0 or you can score a 9. So you can always get the lowest or the highest result, independent of how many dice you roll, but the probabilities shift dramatically. And the funny thing is that if you have the maximum skill of 10, your chance to botch, to roll a 0, and a 0 you can get if all your dice show the same number, right? Obviously.
Right. Yep.
So your chance to roll a botch with 10 dice is exactly 1 in a million.
Okay. Which makes sense. It should be nearly impossible for that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, but it can. You're never safe. And the same, someone with 2 dice, he could roll a 9, the highest possible result. But for this, he has to roll 1 0 and 1 9. So his chance is 1%.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm not sure if you factored in the other thing that I found that a lot of systems leave out in terms of skill and skill progression is, at least to me, it seems like the better you get at something, the harder it is to kind of take that next step up and become, you're advanced, but it's much harder to go from advanced to a master than it is to go from novice to a beginner. Is there any way during progression to work that in?
Yeah, absolutely. The dice system, at first I thought this is a disadvantage, but it turns out that it actually covers exactly this point. The dice system forces you to use at least 2 dice. You can't roll with 1 die. Okay. Because you have this subtract mechanic.
Sure.
So if you learn a new skill, you jump from 0 to 2. And there is a mechanic how to roll 0 dice, but we're not talking about the game dice mechanics, right? So let's not go into too much details. And it's relatively easy to go from from 2 to 3 and to 4, and then it becomes more and more difficult.
Gotcha. Okay.
So and also the statistical change as well, not just buying up with experience point, but also the difference in statistics between 2, 3, 4 is bigger than between 7 and 8, for example. But because I am a statistics freak, I actually included all these numbers in the rule book with a table showing you exactly what is your percentage chance of reaching a certain difficulty rating with a certain number of dice, and what is your standard deviation on how many dice you have. So I think everybody into statistics will be happy.
Which is great for the number of geeks like me.
Yeah, I noticed that actually many more people than I thought are interested in this and like that you included. In the Explorers rulebook, I included an appendix explaining exactly the statistical properties of the dice system I use there, which is a different one, and why I decided on them and how other dice and rolling systems compare and so on and so on. And I found that a few people actually bought the Explorers rulebook for this appendix.
Yeah, I like that. Well, all that sounds really, really cool. What you've been putting up recently on Facebook, and you have a Patreon page even, is really focused on this Atlas idea. Is this something you're able and willing to talk about?
Absolutely, of course. When I started playing role-playing games again here, as I said, I moved, I changed countries. I now live in Vienna, and I came here knowing absolutely nobody. So I decided to go to some role-playing club and just play some games there. And of course, that meant I didn't have a free choice of which games I like to play. I had to play whatever was going on.
Sure. So
I played some of the games that I've been avoiding for years. I've found out why I avoid them. I'm so right. I'm so right in doing that. So if you ever come to Germany, if you ever play German role-playing games, avoid DSA. I tell you. I played it once 20 years ago, and it's the most crappy game system in the world. And it still is, despite it has, I think, 3 editions between. But anyway, personal opinion, it's crap. But I noticed one thing that I maybe missed before, because I mostly played with people close to me who maybe think the same or whatever. But I noticed one thing, and that is that people like the game, not because its game mechanics are good, because they aren't, but because it has a very well developed game world. There is a lot of different, not races, but different peoples of humans. There is actually a map, extensive maps, not just one, of various areas. And, every mountain has a name, every lake has a name. And you can really track your progress through the game world as you move along some road or river. And you can, if somebody says, I'm from, this country, you can look up, how do these people look? How big are they? What's their typical hair color? What's their culture? Which gods they believe in? All these details. And I understood that actually a game is more than just the game mechanics. It's also the game world. And I had missed that because in most of my games, I just created a framework and then let people develop the details, like in Battlemaster and Might and Fealty. So I put an empty world there and let people create the world.
And for some people, that's great. That's all they really need. I'm finding I'm running right now a Pathfinder 2 because the 2nd edition came out, so we wanted to test out that system. And we run with our own custom world, custom campaigns and stuff. But so I'm looking on the forums, asking questions because there's still rule questions floating around. It's that new. There's so many people that are attached to the world, whatever it's called, Galarian, that But what allows them to do is when they go to conventions, they say, I've got this character and they're from this particular town in this particular world. And somebody they've never even met knows exactly where they're talking about and said, hey, we did an adventure in there. I might have met, the mayor of your city. And so there's this weird interconnectivity that it allows because they've gone so deep in their background and world design.
Absolutely. And it's also one of the things that makes the Tolkien stuff so deep, because many people who watch just the Lord of the Rings movies don't realize how much additional game world Tolkien created, and how many more books are there, and how many more unpublished notes he had to create this living world.
Or just songs.
Yes, songs and poems. And, Lord of the Rings plays in the Third Age. And if you watch the movies, you will say, okay, it's the Third Age of the world. Yeah, okay, there were 2 ages before. But the guy actually wrote out the complete history of these 2 ages.
The other ages, yeah, that's right.
That is one thing that makes it really a compelling and living world, and things are there for a reason. And the same is true with the Game of Thrones show. The world is so deep because there is so much history, and everybody has a story, and all these houses are connected somehow. And, he is the lord of that, but he married his daughter to these guys who used to be, and so on, So there's just this huge background, and it makes the world come alive. Yeah,
so you decided you needed to try to figure out a way to encapsulate that in with the system.
Yeah, I decided that you need a game world, and that people love detailed game worlds. And because I'm an overachiever, I decided to start a project with the ambition of creating the most detailed game world in history. And that might be shooting a little bit for
might as well go big, right?
But it's the goal. And the first thing that I needed to do, and that I'm still working on, is I needed to have a frame to put all that into. I needed to have somewhere to store that and to figure it out, because this doesn't fit in a book. You can't publish it in a book. It would be, it would be an encyclopedia. So when I say encyclopedia, the thought was, let's use MediaWiki, which is the software that runs Wikipedia. And I've used it before. I'm familiar with the system. I've set up a MediaWiki for Battlemaster, for example. And people have used it to, post details about their characters and details about this and that. So I thought, let's make fantasy Wikipedia. And the second thing I remember from my recent games was that maps make such a huge difference, because they allow you to see the world in your head, to have a picture, to understand how things are, spatially connected to each other. What is north, what is south, how far it is from one place to the other. And you can do a lot of things with maps to, all these maps we know from school, political maps where you show the different countries, or maps of different climate zones, all this visual information that helps you understand it very, very quickly. And just a political map tells you immediately which country is big and probably powerful, and which country is small, and which country is on the coast, and which is in the mountains. And you would need, 10 pages of text to give the same information that someone can get in, 2 seconds of looking at a map.
Yeah, exactly. That's why things like Google Maps and Google Earth, all those things have blown up, because you can now go and look and see for yourself. Technology has made a lot of that stuff really interesting in the way that we can approach that. So you decided to kind of tackle that. That's what I've seen so far with this project. You've taken the Wikipedia idea and merged it with like your own Google Maps.
Yes, and that is where Might and Fealty comes in, because I had for Battlemaster, I had a very simple map system. It was a computer game map system, so there were areas on the map, and the database knew which are connected, and you could move between them, like fields on a board game. But one of the things I wanted to do differently in Might and Fealty was that I had an actual map, which was not regions. I mean, there are regions, of course, political units and so on. But on the map itself, you can move wherever you want. To travel in Map and Fealty, you would open the map and you would click on a point in the map and say, travel here. And I had some experience with using an actual map system with geographic coordinates. And I've used that and built on it and enhanced it. And what I've created for the Atlas is that I actually have the game world for DragonEye in a professional geographic information system, which is the same software, the same tools that professionals use when they do city planning, road planning, or work on something like Google Maps, or when professionals work with maps, to plan a new tunnel through the mountains, or to discuss land rights with the neighbor country. So that's this level of software. And I have the map. I figured out how to import a map created in one of the random map generators, Askar's Fantasy Map Generators, the name. It's a very good tool. It creates very nice maps, including placing cities and rivers and countries and religions and cultures and many more things. The good thing about it was that it is that the code for it is actually on GitHub. So I downloaded the code. I wrote an export function to get all of this data in a format that the GIS software can use. I made a pull request. It was accepted. So this is now part of the official code base. And then I imported all of this stuff into my GIS software. There, worked on it a little bit, changed this, changed that, and then exported it again to Mapbox, which is one of the tools that you can use to have an embedded map in your website.
And I've seen the work put into that. I have no idea how long it took you to do what you've done, but what I've seen is absolutely beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, it was the main reason that I wanted to do is that if you have a map in a website, there's absolutely no reason to have a picture. It should be interactive. What for people use a web browser and have a map there if they can't, pan around in it, zoom in, zoom out, toggle different layers on and off, whatever we are used to today with Google Maps.
Yeah, and you mentioned the political map. You can do more topographical types of things. Talk about maybe some of the other layers that you're trying to build into this.
So what I have at the moment is if you go to the DragonEye Atlas website, which is online already, despite it's very much empty. But I've decided to put everything online very early so that I can get feedback, that I can use it as well, because I'm running two gaming groups in the DragonEye system and the DragonEye world at the moment, and I am using the map during game. I have a notebook, and it's open. The Atlas is open, and I use it to actually scroll around, look around, figure out details. If players ask, is there a river nearby? I look at the map. I don't invent it. I look at the map and say, yes, there is a river nearby. And so what I have at the moment is that there is a Wikipedia-like Atlas online where you have a lot of text pages. At the moment, I think 144 text pages are written, detailing various cultures and countries and cities and even some villages already. And in many of these pages, there is a map embedded of the if it's a map about a country, for example, if it's a page about a country, there will be a map of the country next to it. This map is fully interactive, so you can zoom out, you can zoom in. And depending on which page I am on, the map shows or highlights different pieces of the map. So if you are on the page of Vericum, which is a large empire in the Dragon Eye world, you will see the map, but you will see Vericum highlighted. So you immediately understand this is the realm that we're talking about. And when you zoom out, you basically have a map the way that you have it in your school atlas, such a world map. So you see the ocean, you see mountain ranges, here is green, here is less green, that kind of map.
Right.
And as you zoom in, more details become visible. Depending on, at the moment I don't have it interactive, you can't turn it on and off by yourself because I use it to show different overlays on different pages. So if you go to the list of countries, you will get a table with all the countries in the world and also a map with all the countries shown in different colors. So the way we know political maps, right? And you can have the same map for the different cultures in the world, and you can have the same map for the different religions in the world.
Yeah, I heard you mention even biomes. Or do you have another layer for those as well?
That's the base map. So if you look at the base map, there actually are yes, on the mountains it's white and it's a snow biome and not many people live there. This all comes from the generator. I just bring it into the map. I just export this. But this is one of the cool things that Aska's generator creates. It takes into consideration humidity and temperature and so on. It creates a believable biome system. So along the rivers, there's usually more vegetation, for example, such details. So this is on the map if you see it on the website. So you have these top level maps showing, countries. And then when you zoom in, more details become visible, like rivers and then cities and then roads. And then when you zoom in more, individual villages start to appear and smaller roads that connect the villages to the main road start to appear. And I am at the moment working on something, and it's working for 2 cities on the map at this time. When you zoom in on one of these cities, as you come closer, the city stops being a dot on the map and buildings start to appear.
Oh, great.
The same way that we have it in Google Maps. So you can actually zoom down to the building level. And when you come a little bit closer, it will start to tell you some of the buildings.
That's incredible.
Not all of them. Many, of course, are just, living buildings, but it will show you here is the town hall, here's a jeweler, here is a stonemason, here is a general store.
Yeah, that's really
so
cool.
That when you play in the city and players ask for, is there a general store in the city? On the Wikipedia page is a list of all these shops. And with some more details, what's the name of the store owner and what is there to know about this shop. And you can click on it and it will actually on the map jump to this shop. That's what I wanted to do, this connectivity between the map and the text. And there are many places in the map where you can click on the map. If you click on the name of a city, the browser will jump to the page of the city, for example, with the description. And the same where they are built in these 2 cities that I made so far. You can do the same with the buildings. So you can see, yes, there is a general store. It's owned by this guy. And wait, let me click here. It is on this street.
That's really cool. Yeah, the amount of depth and detail is that you put into it already. It's a big project. Do you see this being something that over time more people are going to have to be able to contribute to make it work, or what? Or is this always going to be just kind of a Tom thing?
No, absolutely. It's impossible to make it by yourself. I mean, the scale of the world is that I have about 400 cities, and I have started to add villages And I've added villages to maybe 10% of the map so far, probably less. And I count already almost 2,000. So, and to write, just 3 or 4 sentences about each village is already a project that one person could never complete.
Sure. And especially once you start getting into, let's drop in the jeweler, let's drop in the town hall, and, have specific details about all those things. Yeah, that could be very daunting, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the second thing that I'm adding, a layer of social web. So, every country is ruled by some royal family, and there are dukes and barons, and there are people running towns and cities, and every village has a chief as well. And the way that Game of Thrones is built, I want to copy that a little bit and make these families connected, because they were right in the real European Middle Ages. If you were a noble in the Middle Ages, you were probably 3 or 4 steps away from the King of England.
Right.
I mean, because your aunt married into that family, who had some daughter married to that family, who had someone in the royal family, and it gives you just this level of intrigue and diplomacy that you need if your players enjoy that kind of game. Of course, you can run around and get treasure out of dungeons, but some people want to play political games, so they want to understand, why is the king sending adventurers into that dungeon? Why is the king interested in this place? It's just one cave in the mountains. And so I want to add this layer of meaning as well, and I'm starting to develop some noble families and their history and all of that. And that's also one aspect. There is one of the maps on the website is the old map of the world as it was before.
Oh, interesting.
So that you can see the development. And some noble families are old families. They used to be a king in a small kingdom, which has now been absorbed into an empire. And that gives you a depth to this family that you don't have without the back history.
Yeah, and now you understand why they still are the duke or the lord and lady of a particular area, because they have that history. Yeah, I really like that a lot. A fantasy game is just a dungeon crawl unless you have political intrigue, and it sounds like that's what you're working on building in right now.
Yes, it is. And also I want to use this social web to connect places across the map. So you are now in this town, and somebody sends you with a message to that other town. And he does because they are connected. They are relatives, for example, or they are rivals. And if you have this background, it just gives so much more depth to the game.
Yeah. Why is it that your one village is trading with another village that's 3 or 4 more kilometers away from this other one? Was because they don't get along with this, and there's family connectivity between these other ones. So all of those can contribute to even the economy of the regions.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, for example, some spoilers, because the world is developed mostly in the area where I play with my players right now, of course. So I can't go into details without spoilers. One of my groups is right now moving towards a small town where they will be surprised that it seems that it should be bigger, but it's not. Many houses are empty and what's going on. And it turns out that this small town is actually the place where the largest empire in the world was founded. And so for a time, it seemed that it would become big and impressive and powerful, but the first emperor decided to make his headquarters and his capital somewhere else.
Okay.
So this development never happened. And that was just 70 years ago in the game world. So not long enough for the buildings to be all torn down and the city to shrink again. So it's still there. And if players wonder why the empire was founded, I mean, why the most important and powerful man in the world came together for diplomacy and negotiations for 2 weeks into a small castle, in the middle of nowhere, maybe there will be an adventure and they find out that there is actually in this castle a powerful magical artifact which prevents scrying magic from affecting the castle. So this was the one place where they could all gather and could be sure that nobody is spying on them.
Makes sense, yeah.
And that's the kind of details, I mean, which, maybe many groups will never find out, but it just makes a sense. It explains why this happened in this place and why it is connected to that. And it explains why the lords of this city still are the lords of the city. They have these artifacts and so on. And it starts to connect everything together. And now you have a connection to the first emperor, which is not the current emperor anymore. So the royal family actually went first to the capital, then they went back to their family seat. And this connects places across about 400 miles on the game map.
I like it. That's so much detail and depth that a lot of people, especially newer game masters, they don't really think about. The focus is on where's the party going and how does everything relate to the party. But to have a completely different perspective where the world is living, it's breathing, it's vibrant, there's things going on in the world despite where the party is. That's a completely different perspective that I think is lacking a lot of times when people are running games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been a game master more often than I've been a player. For some reason, I don't know why, I always end up to be the GM. And it is incredibly difficult to keep track of everything.
Yep.
It's difficult enough to keep track of everything that's going on with the party. And if they have developed backgrounds, and in the Dragon Eye system they have, because character creation is a life path system, so you don't put points to attributes. There are basically 4 stages in your life as a born. How was your childhood? How was your young adult age when you picked a profession? And what happened that made you an adventurer? And on each stage you choose something. And this something gives you points to your statistics and to your attributes.
Okay, got it.
So by creating a character, you have created his history. You can't, in this system, you can't create a character who doesn't have a story, because you will always have a story, at least something like, okay, I was born as the son of a mercenary and I was always a ruffian in my childhood. And then I also went to the soldier career. Yeah. I mean, it's a very simple, straightforward story, but it is a story.
Right, and for some people, that's enough, and for others, that gives us a platform to kind of build off of.
Yes, absolutely. And there is something about the character for the DM to keep in mind. There was the childhood enemy that you made, the mentor who trained you when you started your professional life, or the noble from whom you stole the magical artifact when you started your adventuring career. These things are built into the game system. So you have a lot to keep in mind if you have a group of 4 or 5 players. There's a lot of things going on just with the players. The purpose of developing such a complete game world is mostly to make sure that even if the game master is busy just keeping track of the players, he has enough material that when the players arrive in some village, it is not a nameless standard village with nothing going on.
Yeah, there needs to be some reason why it's there, something going on. It's not just waiting there in stasis for the players to arrive.
Mostly I want that just simple questions I as a game master, simple questions that players have when they come to a place. Like, is there a shop here where we can buy food for the rest of the trip? Or my horse needs, my horse lost a horseshoe. Is there a smith here who can fix it? And you don't always have, there are many generators on the internet where you can create a village, a random tavern, a random city, whatever, but you don't always have them ready at your fingertips. And sometimes you want a little bit more that makes sense. That, if maybe there isn't a smith in this village and not in the next and not the one after that. And in such case, there should be a reason. And
Right.
if the game world can give you that reason, and you find out that, actually, in this province of this country, smithing is illegal, and only the lord's smiths are allowed to exercise their craft, then you already have the start of a story there. Maybe players will wonder, why is that? What he's afraid of, and then the Atlas will tell you in the hidden secret section, just for the game master. Maybe it will tell you, his grandfather was killed by a peasant rebellion, and ever since they decided that metal is too dangerous for peasants to have. Whatever, there is some story that people can follow.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for all of that to play out. So tell me, big picture, what's the overall goal, and maybe what's the timetable on this project?
The timetable to get to the game world as detailed as I wanted everywhere on the map is probably 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically speaking. But I mean, unless there's some billionaire out there who likes to fund the whole project and I can work on it full time, then it will be maybe 5 years. But I honestly don't expect that I will ever finish it. I want to get as close as possible and show what can be done. And I want to make it so that others can expand on it or add to it. I don't have it yet, but there's a reason I use the wiki system and not some other CMS system. And that is that I can give accounts to other people and let them edit pages or add pages or, change things around, so that collaboration is easy and possible.
That makes sense.
And that was one important thing. And the other big picture is that I'm putting on tutorial videos about how I did everything in order to enable other people to use the techniques for their own game worlds.
Yeah, and they're very thorough, they're very detailed, but it seemed like you packed a lot of information into relatively short little videos. They're what, like 40 minutes each?
The first is 40, the second is just 20 because it's a simple process. This Mapbox is actually very comfortable and it's surprisingly easy to get everything into Mapbox. But I plan 3 more that I've just made sketches of now. I didn't start recording yet. I will maybe do it this weekend about the whole Wikipedia stuff. I'm actually using semantic media wiki, so the wiki is not just text, it actually understands attributes, and I can query it. So okay. I can, for example, go into the wiki and say, what's the average population of cities in this country? And it understands that.
Nice.
So there's this, which I will be explaining how to set it up, how to use it. And I will put all of this into tutorial videos, and then how to bring the maps into this media wiki and how to connect them so that they become interactive. All of this I will put into future tutorial videos. And I really want that people start using these methods, because I see so many interesting ideas on WordPress sites or simple web pages where I think a little bit more power to the technology would enable people to bring this world alive in a different way.
Yeah, I think if they even knew some of these tools existed, there would be so many people really excited to jump on board.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how much power it gives you just to be able to work with maps properly. For example, I've seen a few online tools for managing your game world, your campaign, and they are mostly text-based, and some of them have options to upload maps or to upload battle maps. But this is essentially images. This is not maps that you can zoom and pan and work on.
Yeah.
And just the ability that I can't do that yet in the Atlas, in the Wikipedia, on the web, but I can do it in the GIS system that I'm using behind the scenes For example, a player wants to know, if we march this way, we take the trail through the forest till the main road, then we follow the main road to that city, and at that city we go on the smaller road to that other city. How far is it and how long it will take? And in the GIS system, you have a ruler tool. So you just click on the map where they are, then you follow the road, and just set points. Just click wherever it turns, and it will tell you how long this path is. And then you can say, okay, you make with your equipment, and you have a pack carry so heavy, and these are pretty good roads, and the weather is nice at the moment. So let's say if you average 20 kilometers a day, it will take you 4 days.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. Well, if people wanted to connect with either the Dragon Eye Atlas or the game itself, where can they find those on the website?
The Dragon Eye Atlas is on my not very professional website, which is actually the name, so notveryprofessional.com. It's a joke name, but I needed a name. I'm bad with names. And I just sat down and said, what I'm doing here is actually, I do it with a lot of ambition and with a lot of effort, but it is still a hobby. It's not very professional. And for some reason that just stuck. So it is notveryprofessional.com.
That works.
/dragoneye/atlas. Or you can find Not Very Professional on Facebook. I think if you search for it, it will show up. And you can find me on Patreon. You can find me on YouTube.
And tell people what the hope is with the Patreon, because I think if people really latch onto this, that you might be able to get some supporters that way. So what's the hope with the Patreon? I know you had already released one of the videos early on Patreon, but what's the hope down the road for Patreon supporters as opposed to just everybody else?
There are two things with the Patreon. First, what I want to get from Patreon is I like to see that what I do is meaningful to other people, that gives me the energy to keep going when the hour is late and the work is not so much fun, because much of it is fun, but sometimes you just slog through it. And the best motivation is always that people like what, and one way is to have a vibrant community like we had for Battlemaster or for Might and Fealty. But I don't think that for a game world or a game system, to get that kind of community, you have to be really huge, because this is
right.
Not people interacting with other players in the game they are playing, because the tabletop role-playing game is played around the table, and people will interact mostly with their group and not with strangers on the internet. So the idea was to set up a Patreon page and say, okay, for every person who is interested enough that they are ready to part with a few dollars or euros or whatever your currency, there are probably at least 10 other people who are interested as well. And it gives you the feedback that what you are doing is interesting and that people want to support you. And it gives you the excuse to keep going it gives you this feeling of you can't quit. I mean, people gave you money. You can't just quit because you don't want today.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit a trick to kick myself in the butt, and I know it works because I did something similar for Battlemaster. Battlemaster was always for free, but you could donate. And people have donated a lot of money over the years. And I know that many times when I was frustrated, I could kick myself by looking at the donations and see that people had given money for this, and they like it so much that they give money for a game they can play for free. So you can't just give up and say, I'm not today.
You get to the point where it's one of those days where you say, what's the use? There's no point. And you say, well, people really do care. Whether it's about the game or whether it's about me, there's evidence right here that people really do care.
Yes, absolutely it is. And the second point is that there is, in every project, there is a point where it takes some money. Is for running the web server, it's buying some artwork or for, paying someone to do something for you. And I always like my projects to be self-supporting. I don't mind to put some money in. I don't mind to get some money out. But the basic idea is that if it pays for itself, it's a good thing.
That's a good gauge to have.
Yeah. And so for the Patreon, I want to give, of course, a little bit of thank you to the people who support it. So these tutorial videos, they are always available some days in advance for the Patreons, and other content will be available early. And also for, at least for the beginning, people who want to have an account at the wiki site need to be Patreon supporters. And what it gets is at the moment I don't have set up all this ability to edit anything, but I do have a few pages with these secrets. So on some pages at the bottom, there's a text blurb that says basically there are some hidden secrets about this city, mountain, village, road, river, whatever, and click on this page to get them. So it's like a spoiler warning. And this is only for registered users. And the idea is that in the future, when this is really big and fleshed out, probably people who are GMs in the Dragoneye world will subscribe to Patreon and get access to all the secrets and behind the scenes information about the game world that they can use to build adventures. But people who are just playing in the game world probably will not.
Right, and that makes sense. And if you're working together as a tabletop group anyway, it's probably just a couple of euros or a couple of dollars per person. You just contribute together. That's what we tend to do a lot. If there's a new book that's coming out, let's chip in and let's all contribute to this project together.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any tiers set up on Patreon. Basically, if you want, it's $1 a month.
That's great. If you were to be able to encapsulate everything we've talked about, or if there's something you're thinking of, hey, I missed my opportunity. If you had 1 minute to summarize anything you wanted to communicate today, what's your one more thing before we go?
I think the one more thing is that there is an incredibly detailed game world being developed for a specific role-playing game, but in a way that it can be used for almost any fantasy role-playing game that you want to play. And I'm inviting everybody to play in the world, either in the Dragoneye world or with your own fantasy game system of any what you want, and see how much it can add to your game if you have a map where when you come to a city, you can zoom down to the street level and you can see everything. And then you can zoom out again and you can see the geopolitical power play on the map. And if you are a world builder or if you are a game master, check the tutorial videos and see if you want to use this technique for yourself. It will, if it will add something, if it will make your world come more alive, because I like building worlds for other people. I like building tools for other people. I like to enable other people to do things with their creativity that they want to do, but they can't at the moment because they don't have the technology, they don't have the tools, they don't have the knowledge. And if I can enable them, that would be incredible. And someone very smart and interesting whom I met here in Vienna said, or coined the phrase paying forward. And that's something that I'm trying to do. I don't think Dragoneye will ever replace D&D, but maybe the system that I've developed, the technology that I've made can enable someone else to build something great.
I think with the amount of depth and vibrancy that you're contributing here, I think it allows everybody to step up their game that much more. And I'm super excited for the system to come out when that's available. One more time, can you give them the best website for your project?
At the moment, the best place to go to is notveryprofessional.com/dragoneye/atlas.
Awesome. Well, Tom, thanks for your time. I really enjoyed it, catching up and kind of reminiscing a little bit and then hearing about the new projects you've been working on. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I very much hope that I can come back when the game system for the world is actually finished, because that's a crazy project in itself. I've written about 200 pages so far, and it's a lot of fun. We've been playing it for a while now. It's incredible. I'm very proud of it, and I would be very happy to present that as soon as it's done.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done a few game systems and published them on my own, so I'm sure we'd have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I appreciate all your time.
And I'm very much looking forward to hearing the finished podcast.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. If you like what you heard, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your listening. You can even interact with me directly if you go to anchor.fm/one more thing podcast. That's the number 1 more thing podcast. There you can click on a link to send a voice message. That's a great way to give feedback or let me know if you too would like to be a guest on the show. It's that easy. Special thanks goes out to bigfish_music for providing our theme music and transitions. If you like what you heard, go check him out on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again for listening to One More Thing Before I Go. Until next time, be good to yourself and be good to others.